and welcome to the Kink Perspective. My name's Chris. I'm a psychotherapist and consultant. I'm excited to get into today's topic. It's a topic I covered about a year and a half ago that was received really quite well, especially by the community I'm going to talk about today. It's something that there are some people that I'm actually working with. There's a few different people that I am that are kind of exploring this new world and are, going through different challenges as they look and explore. But I also wanted to take a moment and say a special welcome to all the new people who've joined in and have started becoming a part of this conversation and new listeners to the show. I really appreciate all of your support, all of your questions that I'm getting, some of your emails. It's really wonderful. And if you do find value in what we're saying or what I'm doing here and you want to show a little bit of support, you can absolutely do so. Check out the donation link in the description below. You can donate anything big or small. It always helps because your support means I can keep the podcast going and continuing and exploring some really important themes and topics for our community. Now, today, I'm going to be exploring the emotional and kind of psychological impacts here on couples who are new to polyamory. Now, this transition can be complex and really a deeply personal journey. I'm going to talk about how this shift affects couples emotionally and psychologically and how they handle jealousy, insecurity, their changing relationship dynamics. I am going to talk a little bit about even time management, stress, and the aspects of, something new. I'm hoping that I'm going to give a little bit of real life insight here to some of these emotional experiences. I'm going to talk about some of the people I've worked with in the past that have really helped me understanding the polyamorous community and how they navigate that and the lifestyle itself and all the growth that comes with entering the polyamorous lifestyle. Now, first, when a couple decides to explore polyamory, it's really often accompanied by a whole burst of excitement and idealism. And it's not unlike a lot of new people coming into BDSM. We are super excited to be here. We're looking at all the shiny new things that can go on, and we are excited to dive in, but sometimes we don't even know where to start. And this initial enthusiasm can be a double-edged sword, though. Now, while people might envision a world of limitless love and thrilling new experiences filled with all this optimism about how perfectly things are going to unfold, they might imagine that adding new partners will naturally enhance their bond or bring maybe a fresh energy or deepen a connection that they have. But this idealistic view doesn't always match reality, and the transition into polyamory can be far more complex than anticipated. And the excitement can sometimes obscure the challenges that lie ahead, such as managing jealousy, balancing time, dealing with shifting dynamics. And when we're faced with these difficulties, the initial excitement might start to wane. And couples could find themselves struggling with unexpected emotional hurdles. And that's going to be quite natural in this process because what we're doing is we're openly inviting others into our life romantically or emotionally, and that can cause unexpected conflict within ourselves. Last year when I talked about this, there was very few studies that I have found. I know polyamory is starting to be explored more and understood more, but somewhere that I had read, and just of the few studies I had read, just in North America, only including the United States and Canada, the failure rate for polyamorous relationships was about 90%. Now, that was quite high because I think I remember did the numbers last year, and I said if you roughly have 50 million people trying polyamory over the given course of a year, 42 million of them are failing. That's a lot. That's a high failure rate. And I think some of the things we're going to cover today, we're going to discuss why. If you want to be, in the part that makes it, I think you're going to have to apply a different mindset. I think entering the polyamorous world requires a very different approach to being with someone and how you look at relationships. So before opening up your relationship, couples really need to have this really thorough and honest discussion about what they each hope to achieve and what boundaries and rules they need to establish. It's really essential here to align all of these expectations to prevent anything from being misunderstood and even any potential conflicts down the line. Now, you're not going to be able to foresee every problem, but I think the more you kind of plan something out, for example, I want to go on a trip. I'm just going to go show up at the airport and go, send me here, and I'm not going to know where I'm going. Maybe I need to get shots, or I got to pack a bag, or if I'm going to go somewhere that's really cold, I need to have warm clothes. I'm not going to show up in my shorts. You need to be a little bit prepared and then evolve as things unfold. But if a couple has differing views on how much time they should spend together versus with their new partners, or maybe how they're going to handle romantic or sexual activities with others, one person might expect that their emotional needs will be fully met by their existing partner, while the other one might be open to new sources of emotional support. Clear communication here is about these expectations is truly vital. And if you're discussing how to handle things like jealousy or openness or emotional distancing, comfortability, how we're going to handle our insecurities, all of this can set a good, solid foundation for navigating your future steps through polyamory together. So, what are some of the common struggles that some people that are new, I'd say probably within their first year, that might encounter? Now, as couples do venture into this world for the first time, they're probably going to encounter a range of emotional and psychological challenges. Now, I haven't worked with that many, so I would say a little over a dozen couples in my years inside of my practice. I would say about a dozen have kind of relayed this in different parts to me. Now, while the excitement of exploring the new dynamics in the relationships does give them this sense of exhilaration, it brings to light really complex issues that require really careful thought. And if we're looking at all of these things and kind of peeling back these psychological impacts, we begin to start discussing practical strategies for how to address issues when they come up. So when you're new to polyamory, or just like considering maybe entering it with a partner, if you understand some of these struggles, you can provide some real insight into the reality of managing multiple relationships. Because that's really what we're talking about. Managing different relationships that you are about to enter. Your primary and secondary and everything down the line inside of your polycule or bigger. So first, we're going to look at communication. And it's something, if you listen to the show for the last 2.5 years, I don't think there's really one episode I've never not talked about communication. I think that when couples start exploring polyamory, communication becomes a significant challenge. And as a matter of fact, a couple of weeks ago when I had Raven and Stormy on, you had heard that, Raven initially kind of got into the lifestyle and was polyamorous, and eventually then, found her one, got married, and they've gone back to monogamy. But everything was done with a lot of communication and with a lot of it, a lot of challenges of those two facing together. Now, with the introduction of new partners, though, we're talking about adding layers of complexity to already existing communication patterns that we have. And now we're going to have to navigate new conversations on top of everything else we're dealing with. Bills, kids, dogs, little league, family events, right? For example, even misunderstandings that might arise easily when we're discussing these sensitive topics like boundaries and needs or any of these other feelings that come up. What might have been easy for us before is going to maybe become awkward. Because if we start expressing our true emotions, we might find it difficult to articulate what we now need from a new partner or our existing partner. And psychologically, this breakdown can lead to feelings of frustration or alienation, even resentment. These issues are common, and they can be managed with proactive strategies. I'm not telling you can be prepared for every scenario, but you have to be ready for some of them. You have to have a plan. Now, regular and honest conversations about how you feel, where our boundaries are at, do they need to shift? Do they need to move? And if you need help, if you're struggling, your primary is your number one concern. That's never not one thing ever working with a polyamorous couple all over the world, from Japan to Europe to Australia to the States to Canada. And there's not one couple that I haven't worked with that have said my primary is my main concern, that my outside connections, we both agree, can never interfere with the primary connection. So their bond comes first. It's kind of like if we look at the lifestyle as a comparison, right? We have our health and our education and our work and our families. These things come first. And then our dynamic comes in, right? I want to quickly apologize if you hear a lot of like wind and storms. Pardon me, there's a big hailstorm here today, so it's been kind of a bad day. Anyways, I digress a little bit. All of these things, though, we need to make sure we're setting aside time for check-ins, where we can discuss any of the things that we're confronting, or that maybe even changes in how we feel. Talking isn't just about actively listening, but empathizing with each other's feelings and our experiences. Now, I mentioned jealousy and a little bit about insecurity. I think this is a really main one, and I brought this up last year, but it's worth revisiting. Jealousy and insecurity are often heightened when entering polyamory, and I think for a lot of people they are. I think that they surface for one partner because they may feel neglected, or their position in the relationship might be compromised. And if somebody's struggling with their feelings of inadequacy here, or if they perceive that their partner's attention is divided among several relationships, this is going to exacerbate this issue. And these feelings can be really challenging to manage, and they could lead to emotional turmoil for your primary. And if you understand that jealousy and insecurity are natural responses to, it really can be the first step in addressing them. And it's important to explore the causes of these feelings and communicate them openly. If someone that you're with is struggling with this, it might be even advantageous, before you keep expanding on your outward towards your new connections, then go back and readdress the situation and stabilize what's going on at home. If you're not going to do that and your partner's in turmoil and you keep pursuing things on the outside when you know things aren't going so well with your partner at home, this is more than likely going to, in my opinion, lead to a lot of breakdowns. I could be wrong. And when I get to the feedback stage later on and you all comment on the show afterwards, I'm sure I'm going to hear some things. And I think this community needs to talk about this. Not because I'm against it. I don't think people think I'm against polyamory. I'm not. I think it's a difficult world to navigate, and you have to be ready for it. And I think you have to have a lot of things in place and be really, really secure inside of your relationship before you can expand it and open your relationship or your marriage or whatever you're in up to others. Because you got to have, your partner needs to feel reassured. They need to feel like there's clear boundaries for them, that their needs are being met. And so that way there's value still inside of your main relationship. Because otherwise they may experience these two things. So the next thing let's get into is balancing our time and our attention. And this is one of the practical difficulties in polyamory. Now, I hear this all the time. I've got love for all these people and I got time for all these people. Let's be realistic. We've got 24 hours in a day. If you're dating 4 people, right? Cool. So you can break the day down. You've got 6 hours for each person. Great. Now you got to subtract out all the time you've got to sleep. Let's just say you sleep for 6 hours. You somehow manage just to go the bare minimum each day. Great. So now you've got 18 hours of functional daytime. Then you've got to work 5 days a week. So that's 8 hours more that's gone. So now you're down, you've got 10 hours. 10 hours divided by 4 people. That's 2.5 hours per person. Now, I understand, and I already hear the rumbles, oh, that's not how it works, and we're not doing all this. Well, your primary is going to come first, and all that stuff at home needs to come first, right? Depending on what you're doing, your primary relationship. If you're not setting it up that way, I see it as you're setting yourself up to fail. You can tell me I'm wrong, but I've worked with enough people that I read the documentation, and I speak to other therapists, I speak to poly therapists who tell me the same thing. People who are neglecting their primaries are going to end up without a primary. They end up just with their connections, right? So it's about balancing time and attention between your partners and maintaining the strong connection with your primary. And this balancing act here really can be challenging. I do understand it, and that's what you're actually agreeing to navigate. But you're going to have to learn how to coordinate a schedule so that each relationship that you're adding in gets the attention it needs without overwhelming any other, especially your primary. But this can lead to stress and feelings of neglect if you can't manage it. And you need to use tools like shared calendars, perhaps maybe scheduling apps. God, Google has got a calendar. Get on that, right? Plan out and allocate your time effectively. Prioritize quality time with your primary partner, and then set time aside for your specific moments for the other relationships that are involved in your life. And this is one way you can really navigate it. I'm not picking on you, and I'm not saying it's not possible, but I think if you're not being realistic here, you're just setting yourself up to not have the time for anybody effectively. I can't imagine that I'm going to be that wrong. But I've mentioned this when we've been talking about boundaries. So let's get into boundaries. Now, respecting boundaries, we already do that inside of our relationships, and even respecting a boundary within our own relationships can be challenging. But they're going to be more complex as you get into a polyamorous relationship, because they might include agreements on what's acceptable in terms of our interactions with our new partners, how we handle specific aspects of the relationship. And these boundaries need to be clearly defined and communicated to avoid any sort of misunderstanding. And the impact here of not respecting a boundary can include feelings of maybe betrayal or emotional distress. Regularly revisiting these things and discussing these things as they evolve becomes important, because your relationship is now evolving with your primary. You're both growing. And the flexibility and the adaptability here are key, as boundaries may need to be adjusted over time. And that's where the check-ins are very helpful. This way you ensure that both of you or everybody you're involved with is comfortable, and that with established boundaries, that any new concerns that arise can be maintained in a healthy way. And this really kind of bleeds into this next point here of managing our external reactions. Now, new couples entering this lifestyle, or new people as a whole, you encounter really a range of reactions from maybe your social circles, maybe including your friends, your families, or even your colleagues, because you need to remember polyamorous relationships, while people want to make believe that there's some new invention, they're not. They go back thousands of years, but the reality is the majority of the world doesn't practice that way, and they do view it in a certain light. That's okay. That's their judgment, not yours. But their reactions can maybe vary from curiosity to concern to outright judgment or disapproval of the way you're living your life. Now, you're not living it for them, but you need to be prepared for it. And this impact of these external responses can be quite significant. It can be raise our levels of anxiety, maybe make us feel like we're isolated, or some self-doubt. And this is one aspect that can really complicate this dynamic, is the decision to keep the polyamorous, lifestyle that we're entering private. And for some people, maintaining secrecy about their relationships is a way to avoid potential judgment or conflict. But the secrecy does come with its own set of challenges. Keeping something that's so integral to your life hidden creates, isolation and stress. And the constant need to manage what is shared and what's withheld can lead to a sense of real disconnection here from others, as well as internal conflict about living your authentic self. And how we handle external judgments involves setting our boundaries around what we choose to share and what we choose to maintain private when it's necessary. But it's really important to stay focused on your own relationship and not let those external opinions dictate your choices. Maybe start building a new support network of like-minded people or communities that give you the validation and understanding that you are now entering, and give you this buffer from all the potentially negative external reactions. I'm not going to say that anymore, because people are quite welcoming nowadays. I tend to think, but hey, I'm not everybody on the planet. But I think there is a need between balancing our private and our authentic selves, and this is really an important balance. And while it's natural to want to protect your relationship from any type of harm, being open with supportive people can really alleviate the stress of living in some sort of secrecy. navigating all of this stuff, right? All of the impacts of how secret your life is, or where maybe what's a dirty closet or a dirty secret in your closet that you might feel, does take a lot of consideration and a lot of care. So make sure you're constantly having some conversations about your or with your partner about how you're going to be dealing with some of this external reactions, or maybe how you're going to handle the secrecy surrounding your new life and the new way you're entering your relationships. That way you both feel that you have value inside of this process. Now, finally, I want to talk about one other aspect here, and this is changing emotions. And this is something I don't think a lot of us come to encounter, but it is what it is. Relationships evolve, and especially in polyamory, emotional shifts are common and can present really unique challenges here. Understanding why these challenges occur and how to address them is really important for kind of maintaining what we are going to perceive as a healthy dynamic. Now, first, we're going to talk about the shift in emotional focus and withdrawal. When one partner explores something new, it can lead to a shift in emotional focus and even withdrawal from your primary person. And, that whole excitement of the new connection might overshadow the engagement with your primary, and this can cause feelings of neglect and decreased emotional availability. It's not uncommon. I'm not saying that every polyamorous relationship. I have some really good friends. You guys heard them in the first season of the show. People I highly respect out in Perth that are they're married, they are in a poly relationship, and they make it work. But they put a lot of effort into it. Every day they check in, they're talking to each other. There is no fears between them, because when they talk, they strengthen their relationship. They don't. It's nothing as a subtraction. It is an addition to their relationship. And so when I look at somebody who's making it and they're evolving in that world, that's what they're doing. And I'm sure they've got challenges, and I need to bring them back. I keep saying I'm going to bring them back, and I've yet to do it. Got to do it. We're going to get them on the show. We're going to talk about more of this stuff. But let me keep pushing forward. I keep digressing a little bit. All of these new things, when these happen, why does this shift and withdrawal happen? Because these intense emotions and fresh experiences divert attention away from our primary relationship. And that whole novelty and the intensity of the new things, the new shiny stuff, the ooh squirrel stuff, naturally shifts focus. And it leads to reduced emotional, psychological, and physical engagement with us. And you need to address it. And then we need to talk it out. And we need to say, hey, we kind of understand this might happen. What are you feeling? And start to navigate it. And hopefully, I know sometimes these conversations sound like they are far-fetched and they're not a reality, but if we do sit with our primaries and work through those stages, maybe that's how we address it and that's how we move it forward. But you have to have open communication, because that's essential. You have to be discussing the impact of these experiences on their feelings and how it makes us feel, right? We have to reaffirm our commitment to each other and schedule the time that can help us mitigate any feelings of neglect. And that's where, again, rituals that come in that reinforce our primary connection and our check-ins hopefully help us bridge these emotional gaps. And let me get into the next one here. This is the whole changing of the relationship dynamics. And the introduction here of somebody new alters the dynamics with the primary, including how the decisions are made and how time is allocated. And I mentioned that before. And this can affect the sense of partnership and some sort of mutual support or sense of it. As a new relationship develops, the primary has to adapt to these new changes, and the redistribution of time and emotional energy disrupts the existing balance for some, and it requires a redefinition of their roles and expectations. And you need, again, to revisit and renegotiate your relationship agreements and maybe your expectations about as the new dynamic emerges. Constantly talking about maybe how the new relationship could be affecting your primary can help both of you adjust. But again, it's about prioritizing that communication and effort between the two of you and actively working to maintain your strong connection. Which then leads me to my next point, which is emotional overwhelm. Now, balancing multiple relationships leads to being emotionally overwhelmed. Not for everybody, but I do quite imagine that quite a few people feel overwhelmed when you're starting to date a lot of people. You're managing a lot of new personalities and new emotional sets coming in. And this occurs when someone feels stretched too thin by the demands of managing their time and attention and their emotions between various partners. It's like having not enough butter and, trying to scrape it across bread. And if you know where that quote I'm referencing, kudos to you. You are a movie buff. I know many of you are going to go look that up. But why does this happen? Because managing a lot of relationships requires significant emotional labor and effective time management. And the complexity of juggling all of the needs and expectations of others leads to a lot of stress and a sense of being overwhelmed. And I don't think there's one polyamorous person on this planet that's going to tell me, if you tell me otherwise, that you tell me it's totally easy and it's not a problem at all, I'm going to tell you you're lying. I remember when I just dated. I've never done polyamory, and I was just dating a couple of girls when I was back in college in the Midwest. And my God, that was a headache enough. Not because they were complex, because I had to go to work, and I had to go to school, and I had my friends, and then I had my family, and then I was dating two people. Like, there just wasn't enough time. And then there wasn't even time for me. We can't even neglect ourselves. And I think there's a lot of times we, even inside of our own relationships, forget to neglect ourselves. That's a completely different topic. And that's something I work on with clients. But that's just, that's something else we got to forget. And out of all the time in a day, you subtract your 8 hours for working, fine, 6 hours for working, 6 hours for sleeping, get 12 hours for 4 people. That's just not a lot of time. But, hey, I could be wrong. You might be able to, be Superman and fly from person to person in a split second and, make them all feel special. But I think, if you're going to address being the overwhelming part of this here, you got to put in a lot of self-care. You have to implement effective time management. Make each relationship feel special and unique and be present when you're there, but schedule it. But if you're starting to get overwhelmed, you need to get some external support. Maybe therapy, go to support groups, find some additional tools for coping. Get involved in activities. Great, you're going to add something new. You need to de-stress. You're going to join a sports team. I don't know, play basketball or soccer or rugby or baseball or whatever you're going to do. Go golfing. Great, you're taking more time away from the relationships you've created plus your existing one. Yep, just because you need to de-stress from the relationships. Kind of ironic, isn't it? I know you all think I'm picking on polyamory. I can hear it now. That's quite okay. I can handle it. I'm not. I think there's a lot of shiny veneer that I've always held on to over these last few years. There are a lot of people I respect in polyamory, but I think that because they really work at it, and I like their styles and how they handle them, and there's one special couple that knows, I often refer to them when I'm working with others because their rules are simple, and they've been effective for over a decade, and it's wonderful, and they're a wonderful growth pattern to build off of, and they're always evolving, and it makes me smile when I work with them. But all of these things we've got to navigate. And so I don't want you all just to think that I'm beating up on the back ends of polyamory here. But let me offer you some strategies for a successful transition, right? If you're navigating polyamory, especially in the first year, you're going to have to put in a lot of intentional strategies and ongoing effort. Now, effort's a word I love the most because no matter what we do on this planet, it requires effort. You don't put effort in, you're going to get nothing out. And if you expect anything else, you're entitled. I don't care who you are. I don't care if that's upsetting, but nobody's going to give you anything for free. I'm sure it's not going to give you my emotional labor if you're not putting anything in, right? So don't be entitled. Put a lot of effort in. So here's some strategies you can do to ease the transition. Now, first, it's the number one. You can all guess it. We're going to talk about communication again because I don't talk about it enough, right? I know some of you are going to be chuckling at that because you think I talk about it too much, but that's okay. I'm not wrong here. But any successful transition is about maintaining regular communication, because you not only got to talk to your new people that are bringing into you're coming into your life. You got to talk to your existing partner. You got to figure out what you're going to talk about. How many things do they want to know versus what your primary want to know versus what they don't want to know. What rules do you have, right? Now you're dating someone new. You're all excited. Can you share that with your new partner? Isn't that why you're kind of doing this? Or do you not? Do they not want to hear anything? Are you guys just kind of having, more ethical monogamy, which I kind of look at like open cheating, like you both know you're cheating on each other? That's fine. I'm sure going to get flack for that. I don't care, because you know what? I'm just saying it how it is. But I mean, if you're just, hey, I know I'm going to go sleep with that person. I don't want any details. Okay, cool. That's fine. You're both openly cheating on each other. That's fine. Right? Or I know it's not like that and you're all going to get upset, but you know what? I'm just taking the piss a little bit. Don't get upset. But communication, check-ins, right? Discuss how you feel, address your concerns, adjust your boundaries when you need to. You got to do these things. But if anything else, you got to do these with your primary. Any additional links you're putting in aren't your concern, but that is a point coming in. You got to educate and seek support. You got to get yourself and your partner more educated about polyamory, its lifestyles, and the transitions that are going out, right? Maybe find some books. There are a lot of good books, workshops, and some therapists that specialize in the polyamory lifestyle. That's all they do. I'm not the number one. I'm definitely not the best in understanding the polyamorous world. I have a very good working understanding of it now, but I'm definitely not the best, and that's fine. But support groups are out there. There's a lot of communities to connect with, especially when you start adding in the weird or the bigger community of BDSM. And by the way, I got into a discussion with somebody else, and I'm going to say this publicly now. BDSM and polyamory are not similar at all. They are two different lifestyles. I'm sorry if somebody doesn't agree with that, but polyamory has nothing. That's about multiple relationships. BDSM is the exploration of a total power exchange and everything we do in some sort of erotic fantasy. That has nothing to do with polyamory. That's all I'm going to say on this. There's somebody that had this discussion. I commented, and it went on, and they started. If you're going to link either Wikipedia to me or some newspaper article, that's no, that's all opinions, and I don't. Sorry, not going to listen. It's not about being closed-minded. It's just it's reality. These are two different lifestyles. But if you are going to add in BDSM to your polyamorous relationships, you definitely need to make sure everybody's on board. That's going to add another layer of complexity to what you're doing. So you're going to have a lot of flexibility and patience. You're going to have to, talk to your partner about what expectations may change. Great. Your partner... You just found out your husband now has come out, which is great. He's bi, and he wants to explore his submissive side. And he wants to do that with another guy. So how is that going to make you feel? And now not only is he having a polyamorous relationship, but he's having a polyamorous DS relationship. That's great. He's exploring. He's taking care of himself. He's exploring his new identity and his sexuality. But how does it affect his primary? All of these things are going to be very difficult conversations to navigate. Don't kid yourself that they're not. They're very tough. But I can promise you this, if you do have these conversations, the one thing you're going to get out of it is the understanding from each other. I think sometimes we build these conversations up in our head saying, oh my God, they're going to be a lot worse than they are. And people are going to, our head's going to explode and our world's going to end. It's not. You're going to have a discussion, and at least one way or another, you're going to know. And that's what's important here. You got to have these boundaries. You need to make, clear expectations, what you desire from each other, all of these things. But you can't just walk into it blindly and go, oh, hey, let's hope for the worst or hope for the best. Well, then you didn't expect the worst. And usually at that point, the worst is going to come. And there's even the other flip side. You can navigate all of these things early on. That's why I'm giving you some strategies here. All of these things with reaching out and talking are important. If you need to maybe say, hey, we're 7.5, we're 10 months in, I'm struggling a lot more than I thought. Can we take a break? As a rule, can we just stop right now, refocus on our primary relationship, stop all of our connections. You know, hey, if somebody's calling a flag in the play, maybe that needs to be a rule. I don't know what the poly community, how you all are going to react to that. That could be a volatile statement, or maybe it's really helpful. But I think if they're your primary, and all of a sudden they are hurting and they are in pain because of what we've decided to do, you either care about them and they're the most important person to you, and you're going to go, yeah, hey, we can take a break for a minute. Let's sort us out. Or you go the other direction, go, screw you. I'm, having fun, sleeping and doing stuff with a whole lot of other people or dating other people. Screw you. Well, then you probably don't want to have any type of relationship. You just want to date. Can't do that, right? You're going to cause a lot of emotional turmoil, and then you are going to create, the resentment will come in and everything else. Primary's got to be the concern. I'm going to reiterate, I've never not worked or talked to or experienced with anybody in my years, probably at least the last, even over 18 years, has ever told me that they didn't care about their primary, that their primary was not their concern. Never not heard that. Maybe somewhere 20-something years ago, kind of recall something maybe in like New York once, but that was a long time ago and I'm not completely sure. But I don't think that person actually cared about anybody but himself. Different story, doesn't really matter. But the point is, I've never expressly heard somebody that's in a polyamorous relationship ever once say, no, their emotional needs don't matter, it's all about me. Then you're dating somebody who's selfish, and that didn't even matter about you being poly. You were never going to get anything out of that relationship anyway. Look, navigating this whole transition into polyamory isn't going to be easy. And you have to, it's very important to acknowledge that. Everything you face as a couple are part of the process of building something meaningful and authentic. It's not about making it perfect right away, but it's about understanding and growing through the experience. You're going to have to embrace the bumps and the unexpected turns along the way. They're not setbacks, but they're really part of the journey that will ultimately, strengthen and deepen your relationship, if that's the process you want to go through. But do understand the process is going to test your patience at times and your resiliency. But it offers really valuable lessons and opportunities for a lot of personal growth. So keep pushing forward, stay true to yourselves, and remember that this whole progress in polyamory, like any significant change, happens step by step. So I'd like to get some feedback from the community. I'd like to hear from you. I know there's going to be multiple people coming at this with different angles, so I'm ready for these conversations. I've spent a little bit of time. I've got some upcoming shows, ideas. I've got something on fear play. I am finishing up my discussions with some people in the Middle East. I've been spending the last couple of months talking to various people in different countries like Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, even in Lebanon, about what BDSM looks like in the Middle East. I am going to try to make notes available for people. If I can, there might be something else attached to that. We'll see. But please understand, that's what's kind of coming up. So I am listening. I do hear your requests. I've got some other ones maybe on the DDLG community. It's one I haven't touched in 2.5 years. There's a reason for that. But if you are in that community and you want to sit down and talk to me about the whole DDLG lifestyle and help others understand it and are, ready for maybe some interesting conversations and questions, please feel free to reach out. Love to have you. If you are interested, I do have a book out there, Tangled Desires, the exploration or the intersection between BDSM and psychology. You can get that wherever you buy your Kindle books or read books online or whatever you read them through your, that stuff, or there's a hard copy. You can get it from Amazon. But, let me know. Let me know what you think about today's show. If you have any questions or anything you think I missed, let me know. I think it's really, it's a big, big subject. It's a big topic. Until next time, everybody, be safe, stay kinky.